Hey everybody, I am going handheld today because I am going to start a project. This is a giant mirror that I got at the craft store. It was a $150 mirror and I got it for $50 on clearance. It's got this nice wood frame, kind of a rustic look, and this is going to become the basis of my State Fair of Texas entry this year. So this piece of glass is 18 inches across, and I need to cut a piece to fit in there instead. So the way this is constructed, let's see if I can do this in one hand. Ugh. So you can see on the back how it's just held on with these picture framing overhangy doodads. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take those off, pop the mirror out, measure the mirror specifically. This backing is 18 inches. I assume the mirror is about the same, and get my measurement to cut a big circle. I don't know that I've ever cut any circle that's quite that big. I've probably cut a 14-inch circle before, but I don't know about 18. So anyway, I need to select my glass, get my area prepped here to do a circle. And I don't have the setup to really show that. So I don't even know if I'm going to show cutting the circle. Hopefully it's successful and you just see the finished circle when I'm done. So stay tuned. Okay, that worked out well. So I got the mirror out, and the mirror was actually glued to the back of the frame here. And I was able to get it off real easy. Just a little bit of glue and tape kept that on there. And so I like this actually, because now when my piece of glass is done, my art glass is done, I can basically glue it down onto this backing for additional structure, because it's going to be a single layer 3mm piece. So putting it in this frame was making me nervous to begin with, thinking about that. But if I can glue it down onto this backing, it gives it a little bit more structure. So that's going to be good. This is 18 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and try to cut my circle. Well, I asked you to cross your fingers, and thank you, because that worked. First cut. Whew, feels good. All right, so now that I have my circle cut, I am going to float in the middle of this an outline of the state of Texas. And so my freehanding is terrible, so I went to the interwebs and I just found a Texas graphic and scaled it up to the right size. I had to print it in tile format on my printer so that I could print the whole thing. So I've trimmed it and taped it, and it's not perfect, but it's fine. It's good enough for this, because all I need to do is be able to do a rough tracing. So what I am going to do is get my glass clean, and then I think I'm just going to use a thin black Sharpie, which this burns off. Probably, unless you really want it to, then it probably won't. So hopefully this doesn't burn me. But I haven't had too much problem with Sharpie before, and by going thin, that's even better. So what I'm going to do is, once I have this in a spot that I like, after I've cleaned my glass, I'm going to carefully trace this out so that I have the ghost outline of the state of Texas. All right, here are some of the Waterjets that I did some embellishments on that are going to go into the kiln to fire, kind of pre-fire. I'm sorry I didn't do videos on all of these. I just can't. I'm exhausted. And so I'd rather just tell you about them. So on the boot, let's see if I can get rid of that glare. So I put a couple of dichro stars. I had some stringers that I had draped for a different project that I thought would make a really cool pattern. And then I used some I used some of those medium pens, the Ranger medium pen, which is just basically like a glue pen, and then dusted it with some black Colors for Earth silkscreen black to make a little bit of a heel on that thing. So that's the boot. Next, the armadillo. So all I did was I dusted a very fine layer of black powder. I used a pencil basically to kind of draw some armadillo armor lines across him. And then I had a tiny little blue dichro dot, so I put that on there. So that is it. I think that that'll just darken the armadillo just a little bit. I mean, there's barely any powder on there, but I think it'll give it just a little bit of color, and then you'll be able to see that texture. You're not gonna be able to see this, but on the Alamo, I kind of used, again, that Ranger pen, the little glue pen, and I did some dots and some lines and kind of some shading and shadowing a little bit. And then, maybe you could see it just a little bit there. Let's see, can you see that? I don't know. I used transparent sienna powder. So I'm hoping that that darkens just a little bit, not too dark. I don't want brown. That's why I went with transparent, and there's just a very thin layer, and I think that that's going to fuse onto that French vanilla and just give it a little bit of an aged look. That's the hope anyway. I had this yellow star from Henry, and I put glue all over the front of that, the Ranger glue pen, and I dipped it in gold mica because I want to get that star to look a little more gold. On the Cadillac, so if you're familiar with the Cadillacs, or you saw the photo, they're all painted, and so what I did here was just a little bit of my version of graffiti. I had a tiny gray Murrini chip from Tabitha at Tabitha's Glass Emporium, and so I used that to make a hubcap. And then all of this color that you see on here is Colors for Earth. It's the designers. And so I used that Ranger medium pen, which is a glue pen. I drew out my words and such and my sketches, and then I used the different colors of the powder to give that graffiti look. So I went color by color. I did the white first, then I did the red heart, then I did the yellow name. And every time I had to kind of re-clean the piece and then draw the next, then I drew the teal, then I drew the pink. Okay, and then, sorry for the bad camera work here. So the Pegasus. So the neon Pegasus is basically an outline. And so I used that Ranger pen. Sorry about my camera work here. It's just, there's such a glare. I used that Ranger pen, and I drew the outline of the horse. I drew the wings on, and then I had some dichro powder, which I've never used before, and holy smokes, what a mess. But I used dichro powder, and it was CBS dichro that is red silver. So this looks silver, but when it fires, I think it'll have a little bit more of a red look and then kind of have a shift. That's the hope anyway. Even if it doesn't happen just as silver, I think that that's pretty cool. And because that made a mess and I had stuff all over and I didn't want to just sweep it into the garbage to clean it up, I grabbed a little bitty tiny chip of Tecta, I put a little bit of glue on it, and I tried to dab up that dichro, and then I'll just throw that in my scrap and have a tiny little bit of silvery dichro scrap just to try to use everything. Oh, my taco and so these are not water jets. So I wanted to make an oil derrick. So this is clear Tecta, it's 2mm Tecta. And then some of those stringers are black 2mm, and then the thinner ones are 1mm. And I just kind of built what I think looks like an oil derrick, and then I've got a little oil splooches to come out the top. So I think that that'll look kind of cool. And then I built a taco. This is just cut glass. And then I used some of Tabitha's green confetti mix. I picked out the littlest bits. Most of that, sorry if this is blurry, most of that is aventurine. And then, of course, I used tomato red frit and a little bit of white frit. And so I'm gonna have a little taco. So those are the embellishments of the water jets, and then this is the other pieces that I made handmade. And I'm gonna fire all of these. I'm not gonna go very hot. I'm probably gonna go just to I don't know, 1350 or so, maybe not even that much, 1325. I just want to kind of center some of this stuff on here, you know, a very light tack, because it's going to go back in, and so I don't want it to get too much heat work, but I just want these things kind of on there. So I'm going to do a very light firing, like I said, probably 1325. I got to think about it a little bit, but I always post my firing schedules, and so once I decide, I'll post that in the video notes. All right, so I fired at 1325, which is really just a tack fuse. And this Alamo, I can barely see the sienna powder on there. I think that's what I used. So there's an original one on the bottom, and then there's the fired one on the top. And there is a little bit of variation, but not enough that I want. So I am going to basically do the same technique. I'm going to use the medium pen, Ranger medium pen. If you're interested in these, they're in my Amazon store, and I'll post the link within the video notes. So I'm going to use that, and this time I'm going to go ahead and use, Sienna was the only transparent that I had. I have some Cinnabar, which is opal, but I'm going to use such a thin amount, I don't think it's going to overwhelm. So I'm going to do the same thing and do a little bit of Cinnabar powder. And I'm not going to pre-fire it, it'll just go right onto my piece and fire along with everything else, but I'm going to work on that in a little bit. All right, so I added a lot more to it here after the time lapse. What I did was I put a little stool and I stood up on top of it and looked over it, and then I took a few pictures and studied the pictures. I just think you get different perspectives when you get, you know, I'm down a more eye level to it. When you get up above it, you get to see it a little bit differently. So I ended up adding a lot more flowers just to kind of fill in. A lot of these are beautiful flowers from Lori Moreno. All the yellow roses, get it, Yellow Rose of Texas, those are all from Lori. I think most of this is all from Lori. There may be a piece or two from Tabitha Burrell, Lori Moreno's Wilderness class on Etsy. I'll drop her link. And then I'll go ahead and drop Tabitha's too, but I think most of this is from Lori. So after I got everything placed extremely carefully, then I used some hairspray just to kind of tack everything down. And so you can just kind of see how it's all on there. That black outline of the Texas is done in Sharpie. That should burn off. And then what's left is this collage of the state. And then I put the other little state flag down there. I am going to dust this with clear powder before I fire it, just to hopefully prevent any devitrification, give everything a nice crisp, clean look. So I'm going to wait just a moment while the hairspray is drying. I got a fan going here to make sure everything is dry. The hairspray allows me to get it over to the kiln, because clearly I didn't build this in the kiln, but I'm very excited about what this looks like. So I am going to dust it with hairspray, then I'm going to fire it. My preferred firing schedule for something like this, in order to really keep the texture, is 1375 as my top temp. I do that for about 10 minutes. And then I'm going to anneal the heck out of this, because it's one 3 millimeter base piece of glass. These Waterjets are 3 millimeters, so that's 6. But then in some cases, I've got 2 layers of you know, elements there, so that really makes it 9 millimeters. And you know, some of these pieces of Murrini are thicker than others, and because I'm only doing a single sheet of glass and I'm doing kind of a contour fuse, I think that adds some extra stress. So I am going to anneal this for a very long time, probably way too long of a time, I think, but I don't know, I'm thinking something like 6 hours, just because the cry factor, as you can imagine, is huge on this. So anyway, let's I'm going to dust it with powder, I'm going to put it in, I'm going to fire this thing, and cross your fingers that nothing jumps, that it all turns out okay. Pretty proud of my blue bonnets that I made there. So the reason I mention those is because sometimes that frit has a potential to jump, so that's what made me think about it. But anyway, let's throw this in the kiln and see how it goes. All right, here's the kiln reveal. There's still heat coming off of this thing, so it's too hot to try to take out. But the outline burned off. I'm very pleased with the overall look. These pieces fired beautifully. You can see how I got a little bit more color on the Alamo, so that worked really well. I am absolutely thrilled. So now I gotta wait for this to cool off enough. I used thin fire this time instead of papyrus, since I don't know, I had some around and I've been aggravated with the papyrus, and the cleanup is a mess either way you go, so that's why it's already kind of falling apart here. But I love it. So let me get it out and figure out how to get it in the frame. Okay, it occurred to me, gosh, I'm not filming a video. So I have put the, this came out and it is gorgeous, as you saw. This is the frame. There was a gap of about this big, like a overhang or a lip in the frame. And I decided that I really want this glass to kind of sit in here snugly, and I want it to be cushioned. And so I went to the store and I found weather stripping. That is foam weather stripping, 3/8 inch wide by 3/16 thick. And so as you can see, so it's sticky on one end and it's all black. And I ran basically this weather stripping all around the edge and made a full circle ring, and then I placed my glass down on top of it. So it is now cushioned into the frame here, and it's not necessarily directly touching the wood on the front of the frame. So now that the glass is in here, I want to put the back on, and I decided I don't want to, hang on, let me do this. There, that's a little bit better. I don't want to glue this back on necessarily. So I happen to have this Gorilla tape, mounting tape, and super strong. You know, it would probably be a little bit of a pain to get off this glass if I'm going to take it out of the frame at some point, but I'm not too worried about it. And it's better than glue, in my opinion. So now I'm just dropping this back onto there as closely as I can do it with one hand. Just kind of carefully. I don't want to press in the middle of the glass. I don't want to push my hand through it and shatter my piece, but I'm just carefully, you know, kind of getting that on there. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the hardware on the back here that's going to hold this whole thing together. And then I'll flip it over and we'll take a look. All right, and there it is. It is finished. And so as you can see, like, you really can't even see, it looks like it's resting right on that wood. So I'm pleased with that weather stripping. You can't see it at all, but it presents a very nice cushion. I feel like I'm delirious because it's so hot in the garage, and I did not turn on my air conditioning. I am loving the Waterjets. They're just awesome. So Henry at SS Glass Art, thanks again. Glass Art Studio, thanks again for taking care of us here in Texas, because this stuff is awesome. The designer series from Paula McCoy at Colors for Earth. Again, I'm delirious. Those worked so well on there. I just love it. All of the gorgeous Murrini from Lori Moreno at Wilderness Glass. So I'm gonna take some photos here, and then I finish this thing just in time to take it to the fair. Let's see how I do. Okay, I've known the results for a couple of weeks now, but today the fair opened and I got to go check out my piece on display. So here it is again, one more time. This was a photo I took before I went and turned it into the fair. And then I turned it in, and a couple of weeks later, I was notified how I placed. And then now a couple of weeks after that, the fair finally opened today, and here it is. I got second place, so I mean, I'm pleased with that. I'm pleased that I got a ribbon. I'm happy. In this category as a professional, I have to enter a category called glass. There's a stained glass category, and then this one is just glass. So you're never quite sure what you're competing against. And here's what won first place. I've blocked out her name on here because I don't think that's fair. She's a painter, and she painted this beautiful painting on a bottle. And I just don't know that I like that that was in the glass category, because it's a completely different skill set and medium. And I don't know. It's what I competed against. So I'm happy with my second. Here it is in the display case. If you've never entered your local fair, county fair, state fair, I encourage you to do it. It's really kind of a special feeling to be recognized by judges and then have your piece on display. When I went to take this picture, there were some women that were actually standing there looking at my piece, talking about it, which is kind of a fun feeling. So if you don't already follow me on Facebook, please do so. We have a lot of fun over there. You can find me at facebook.com/YouTube Jamaison. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.